Guys, what's up? It's Charlie here, and today we're diving into the 10 most savage moments on Beyond Scared Straight. This show was supposed to scare troubled teens away from crime, but sometimes things got completely out of control. We're talking gang members screaming inches from kids' faces, massive prison fights, guards pulling weapons, and teenagers who actually tried to fight inmates inside jail. Some of these kids broke down crying. Others acted fearless, even when surrounded by dangerous criminals. But the craziest part? A lot of these moments happened on live cameras with almost no warning. So today, we're counting down the wildest, most intense, and most savage moments ever caught on Beyond Scared Straight. And trust me, some of these scenes look more like action movies than a TV show. Before we begin, make sure to leave a like, subscribe, and comment which moment shocked you the most. Now, let's jump into it.
Off the list is one of the weirdest gang confrontations ever seen on the show. This teenager claimed he was part of the Bloods gang, but honestly, nobody believed him. The kid looked nervous from the second he walked into the jail. He wore oversized glasses and barely made eye contact with anyone. That's when a real gang member stepped forward. The inmate slammed him against the wall and started shouting directly in his face. He demanded to know if the kid really wanted to live the gang lifestyle. The teenager instantly froze. The inmate mocked him, calling him fake and soft, while the guards watched closely nearby. But then things somehow became even stranger. Another prisoner walked over and handed the kid an orange, forcing him to peel it while everyone screamed at him. The teenager looked completely confused and terrified. At one point, the guards ordered him to do push-ups while inmates laughed around him. The entire scene felt chaotic and uncomfortable. What started as a tough act quickly disappeared, and by the end, the kid looked like he regretted ever pretending to be part of the gang.
Moment became one of the most intense scenes ever shown on the series. A teenager was locked inside a jail cell while inmates surrounded the outside, screaming threats and banging violently on the bars. The producers likely wanted to scare him, but things escalated way too far. Suddenly, two inmates forced the cell door open and rushed inside. The teenager immediately backed into the corner as the prisoner shouted inches from his face. One inmate shoved him while another blocked the exit. The situation became so dangerous that guards rushed in holding large rifles. One officer fired warning shots into the air, instantly freezing everyone in place. The prisoners dropped to the ground while alarms echoed through the jail. Even the inmates looked shocked at how serious things had become. The teenager stood there speechless, clearly realizing how quickly prison situations can spiral out of control. For many viewers, this scene crossed the line from reality TV into something genuinely terrifying. And honestly, if this happened to most people, they'd probably never want to see the inside of a jail again.
Teenager entered the program because of violent behavior and fighting at home. But once inmates heard he had attacked his own mother, everything changed. Several prisoners immediately surrounded him and started screaming questions in his face. The kid tried acting tough at first, but the inmates weren't impressed. One prisoner shoved him against the wall while others ripped items from his hands. Another inmate grabbed his shoes and tossed them across the room. The guards attempted to control the situation, but tensions kept rising. Then, one angry inmate suddenly charged toward the teenager. A guard quickly tackled the prisoner away before a serious fight broke out. Meanwhile, another inmate grabbed the teen from behind, making the entire room erupt into chaos. Even the cameraman nearly got hit while trying to film the confrontation. The teenager who once acted aggressive suddenly looked terrified and overwhelmed. By the end of the scene, his confidence had completely disappeared. It was one of the clearest moments on the show where a kid realized prison violence isn't entertainment, it's survival.
Teenagers on the show eventually stayed quiet when inmates yelled at them. But this kid did the exact opposite. He was brought onto the program because of gang activity and stealing. At first, he ignored everything the prisoners were saying. Then, one inmate insulted him directly. That's when the teenager snapped. He started screaming back at the inmate while guards tried pulling him away from the situation. But just as everyone thought it was ending, the kid turned around and spat directly at the prisoner. The entire room exploded. The inmate lunged forward in anger while guards rushed between them. Other prisoners started laughing and shouting at the same time. Even some guards looked shocked by what had just happened. Spitting on someone inside prison is considered deeply disrespectful. And for a second, it looked like the inmate might actually attack the teenager on camera. The kid continued yelling while being dragged away by officers. It was reckless, disrespectful, and honestly, dangerous. But it also became one of the most unforgettable moments in the entire series.
Teens on the show eventually broke under pressure, but not this girl. She was brought into the program because of fighting, graffiti, and drug-related behavior. During one exercise, a female officer ordered her to run in place as punishment. The teenager instantly became angry. The officer mocked her attitude, telling her to hit her if she wanted to. That turned out to be a terrible idea. Without warning, the girl actually lunged forward and attacked the officer. The two crashed into chairs while guards rushed across the room. The entire situation became pure chaos in seconds. At one point, it looked like the teenager nearly slammed into a concrete wall. Other inmates started yelling while officers struggled to separate everyone. Even after being restrained, the girl continued screaming aggressively at the guards. What made this moment so shocking was how fearless she seemed. Most kids became emotional or scared around officers, but this teenager fought back immediately, making even the guards look surprised.
Might have been the toughest teenager ever featured on the show. At only 15 years old, she claimed to lead her own gang. And unlike many kids who acted tough for attention, she genuinely seemed fearless. Female inmates surrounded her, screaming insults directly into her face. Most teenagers would cry under that pressure. She didn't even flinch. The inmates called her names, mocked her appearance, and tried intimidating her physically. Nothing worked. Eventually, guards brought in larger male inmates, hoping they could finally scare her straight. But even then, she stayed calm and stared directly back at them. At one point, she actually attempted to fight one of the prisoners before guards stepped in. The inmates themselves seemed frustrated that they couldn't break her confidence. After the episode aired, many viewers debated whether the program had any effect on her at all. Because honestly, she looked exactly the same leaving jail as she did entering it. And that's what made this moment so unforgettable.
Teenager became one of the loudest and most chaotic people ever seen on the show. She entered the jail surrounded by multiple officers after repeated stealing and violent behavior. At first, she argued non-stop with the guards. Then suddenly, she completely lost control. She started screaming at the top of her lungs while thrashing wildly around the room. It took several officers just to keep her restrained. The sounds she made honestly shocked viewers watching at home. Some people compared it to a horror movie scene because of how intense her reaction became. The officers repeatedly ordered her to calm down, but she continued fighting against them. Even experienced guards looked exhausted trying to control her. Meanwhile, other teens nearby watched silently, clearly terrified by the situation unfolding around them. The scene quickly went viral online because viewers couldn't believe how aggressive things became. And despite all the yelling and chaos, the teenager never once appeared scared. This teenager entered the jail acting completely fearless. He laughed at the guards, joked with inmates, and treated the entire experience like a game. But that confidence didn't last long. Two intimidating guards cornered him and warned him that prison would destroy people like him emotionally. At first, he kept smiling. Then suddenly, his entire attitude changed. The teenager panicked and ran away down the hallway while guards chased after him. Eventually,
officers cornered him and forced him back into the room. That's when inmates ordered him to start doing push-ups while repeating that he would respect his mother. The teenager struggled physically and emotionally as prisoners screamed around him. Even some guards seemed to feel bad watching the scene unfold. What made this moment stand out was how quickly his fake confidence disappeared. One minute he was laughing, the next he looked completely broken. Teenagers entering the jail were searched carefully by guards, and thank goodness they were, because one teenager arrived carrying an actual knife. Officers immediately discovered the weapon during the security check. The room instantly became serious. Guards explained that if this had happened anywhere else inside the jail, the teenager could have faced real criminal charges immediately. Even inmates looked shocked by how reckless the decision was. The teenager stood silently while guards questioned what he was thinking. Another prisoner started screaming at him, saying bringing a weapon into prison was unbelievably stupid. Honestly, he had no excuse. The kid later admitted he carried the knife for protection, but bringing a weapon into a correctional facility only made him look more dangerous and immature. Viewers online couldn't believe someone would attempt something so reckless. And luckily for him, the guards found it before something far worse happened.
The #1 spot is one of the craziest fights ever shown on Beyond Scared Straight. A teenage girl named Lexi entered the jail because of stealing and bad behavior. At first, inmates surrounded her while shouting insults from every direction. One male prisoner then stepped closer and touched her aggressively during the argument. That turned out to be a huge mistake. Lexi instantly squared up and started fighting back. The room erupted into chaos as guards rushed toward the fight. The inmate tried overpowering her, but Lexi refused to back down, even for a second. Other prisoners stood up screaming while officers dragged the inmate away from the situation. Many viewers were shocked because most teenagers became terrified around inmates. Lexi did the exact opposite. Even after guards separated them, she continued yelling and trying to move toward the prisoner again. It was reckless, dangerous, and honestly, unbelievable to watch. And that's why this moment became one of the most savage scenes ever shown on the program.
Were the 10 most savage moments on Beyond Scared Straight. Some of these teens completely broke down, while others acted tougher than the inmates themselves. But one thing's for sure, this show created some absolutely unforgettable moments. Which moment shocked you the most? Was it the girl fighting the gang member, the warning shots inside the jail, or the teenager who brought a knife into prison? Let me know down in the comments. And if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to leave a like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss another countdown. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.